I also wonder, bro, like from a human perspective, Molly was your sidekick for 10 years. We don't need to know she abruptly resigned.
Yeah.
Protect her at all costs.
Yeah.
That's my big thing, Social Trey.
I thought she was
Like,
here for the end of the year. I guess she's
well,
done now.
remember, she didn't want it to leak because Molly ends up putting out a statement that, hey, it's unfortunately leaked. I didn't want it to, etc. But protect her at all costs.
We share much reflection. I've decided it's time to close this incredible chapter. That's how Molly Qerim chose to break the news to the world. Just a single, meticulously crafted Instagram story, posted without warning on the night of September 15th, 2025. The phrasing was careful, almost surgical. She thanked the most brilliant, passionate, and entertaining voices in sports, but as we scrolled, hungry for a mention of the man she shared that desk with for a decade, Stephen A. Smith, his name was nowhere in sight. Not even a generic hat tip to her infamous sparring partner. Nothing. Just a void. It's the kind of omission that isn't an oversight, but a deliberate signal. One that anyone in showbiz or even a moderately toxic group chat would instantly clock as a message beneath the message. We've all seen that move before, the friend who thanks everyone at a going-away party but skips the one person who once mattered most.
Molly is a friend. Molly is a coworker. Molly is somebody that I have leaned on many occasions in the past, as she has done when it comes to me. We've been partners on the show for the last 10 years.
By sunrise, sports fans were wide awake, sniffing trouble. The next morning, First Take opened in eerie silence. Stephen A. Smith sitting at the same desk, but with the chemistry utterly scrambled. He led the show with what was meant to be a tribute, calling Qerim an enormous part of our success for a decade, tossing out words like grace and kindness, and, in the grand tradition of daytime television, making sure to say, we'll miss her. On paper, it was a lovely eulogy for a partnership not even cold yet, but the tone? Hollow. It landed with all the emotional warmth of a LinkedIn endorsement from your boss after you just filed an HR complaint. We could almost hear the legal team ghostwriting in real time, and social media caught on fast. The performance seemed, at best, procedural, like a pilot reading a checklist as the plane gently smokes from the engine. Smith did manage to call her a friend and claimed, "I will miss spending every weekday morning with her right by my side." But anyone who's watched First Take for more than a week knows that Smith, when genuinely moved, can make a Monday morning episode about preseason basketball sound like the moon landing. Here, he sounds like he just lost a filing cabinet.
A lot of times, some of these things happen, and it's just uncomfortable to see. The details, quite frankly, are none of y'all business. But it's not as if I know all the details. It was a contract negotiation that was going on. ESPN certainly did not want to lose her. But in the end, she made a decision.
If only the tribute had been the end of it. By the afternoon, Smith's tone shifted again, this time on his Sirius XM show, where the gloves started to come off. The facade of corporate unity cracked when he snapped. "The details are none of y'all's business," adding, "It's not as if I know all the details." Suddenly, the greatest talker in sports didn't have a take, just evasions and a tightrope walk between indignation and self-preservation. His insistence that he wasn't in the loop only stirred the cauldron further. If Smith, supposedly so close to Qerim, couldn't, or wouldn't, address the real reasons behind her walkout, what exactly was he hiding? What was too messy, too dangerous, or too embarrassing for public consumption? And why, only a day after his supposed heartbreak, did he pivot to vague sermonizing about leverage and knowing your place at ESPN? It's almost as if the company line and personal pride had just become one big tangled microphone cord.
Don't tell us the details, then tell us you're not going to tell us the details.
And then add on that, I don't know the details. What are you doing? What are you doing?
Like he said this. He said she abruptly resigned. That's a detail.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to say, but don't ask me the details because I'm not going to tell y'all the details. That's none of y'all business.
Right on cue, former NFL player and ex-ESPN insider Marcellus Wiley waded into the fray. And he didn't just toss gasoline on the fire. He built a bonfire, broke out a folding chair, and handed out marshmallows. Wiley, on his Hydration Situation podcast, claimed the story was bigger than just a contract gone sour. According to him, Qerim's relationship with Smith was not as strong as advertised. He laid it out plainly. Qerim asked for either a meaningful raise or the freedom to host her own show. ESPN, seeing an opportunity to tighten the purse strings, balked at both. But Wiley's most damning allegation wasn't about Qerim's ambition. It was about Smith's power. "When he doesn't sign off on you, you don't get what you want," Wiley insisted. That's the kind of line that, once spoken, can't be unsaid. Suddenly, the narrative shifted from a routine negotiation to a tale of one woman boxed out, not just by a company, but by the man sitting across the desk. It wasn't about ratings or resumes or on-air chemistry anymore. It was about who was allowed to climb the ladder and who was told to hold it steady. At this point, the contract details started to trickle out. Qerim, despite a decade moderating the company's most watched show, was told she could stay at ESPN, but only if she agreed to step down as host of First Take. ESPN President of Content Burke Magnus confirmed the bombshell. Qerim was out, period, and the network would need 30 to 45 days to audition her replacement. That, for a host who had kept the show on the rails through more on-air brawls than a Real Housewives reunion, was the final insult. ESPN's message was unambiguous. 10 years of loyalty, a prime seat on the highest-rated panel in sports television, and it all ended with a boot to the curb and a hasty game of musical chairs. The cold mechanics of the decision played out like a middle manager trying to add versatility by cutting hours. They said she'd get other opportunities, but the only real offer on the table was a graceful demotion.
More details have been released as to why Molly Qerim abruptly quit ESPN. And when I say abruptly quit, I mean she left work, I think it was on Monday, and she never came.
And still, as rumors swirled, Qerim stayed above the fray, or at least tried to. Her Instagram sign-off was polished to a shine, every syllable measured for maximum gratitude and minimum gossip. Lifelong friendships, unforgettable memories, and the chance to be part of something truly special, she wrote, never once addressing the swirling tornado of speculation outside her feed. Meanwhile, ESPN, that paragon of workplace family values, quietly scrambled to line up a parade of replacements before Qerim's seat was even cold. Burke Magnus, in what can only be described as the "we wish you well in your future endeavors" phase of Damage Control, admitted they'd known Qerim was leaving, but the timing surprised them. Surprised? This is the network that signs 9-figure deals with its loudest voices and then plays musical chairs with the ones who moderate those voices.
I think we'll start with Molly Qerim. Yesterday when we talked, we knew that she was leaving, but we didn't know she was leaving like immediately, which is an indication that, man, this thing's a bit more complicated than just they couldn't settle on the money. It just seems more seriously. She's off the show.
If anyone at ESPN was mourning, it wasn't showing. The morning after Qerim's exit, there was no video tribute, no parade of tearful colleagues, just an on-air shuffle to the next big debate. 30 to 45 days of tryouts, as if replacing the host was a matter of putting in a new light bulb. Insiders whispered that Smith himself was furious and blindsided, not by the loss of a colleague, but by the sudden exposure of just how much of his influence was built on sand. Losing Qerim didn't just punch a hole in the morning show, it let in daylight on the behind-the-scenes power games he'd mastered for years. But the real headline, the one nobody could ignore, was that Instagram post. There was love for the fans, for the company, even for the lifelong friendships she'd supposedly built. But Smith's name was missing, erased as cleanly as if it had never been there. No inside joke, no call-out, not even a passing reference. It's the kind of snub that gets noticed in this business, the kind of omission that keeps rumor mills spinning for months. So what really happened between Molly Qerim and Stephen A. Smith? And why, after all the noise, was Smith still so determined to keep the truth locked away?
I looked up to Stephen A. Smith for a very, very long time. He was one of the reasons why I got into sports media, but then I ended up meeting him. Wasn't the most, one of those don't meet your hero type experience. I don't know all the details, and I'm not gonna tell you all the details because it's not your business. But I'm gonna be honest, it was an uncomfortable situation, and now watching him, get older, trying to go into the digital space, it can be a little uncomfortable.
We can't ignore the bigger pattern here, and the evidence is right in front of us. Molly Qerim's abrupt departure isn't just some one-off drama. This is ESPN's house style, especially when it comes to their top female talent. The list of accomplished women who have walked out the door with a polite farewell and a suitcase full of what-ifs keeps getting longer. Remember Jemele Hill, who made SC6 must-see TV, only to be shown the exit after public clashes with management over the limits of her on-air commentary? We all watched as Kari Champion, Qerim's predecessor on First Take, was quietly moved aside after years of holding her own against the biggest personalities in sports. Champion eventually left in 2020, surrounded by the same careful language about new opportunities and turning the page. If history is any indicator, the pattern is almost algorithmic. A decade of loyalty, a sudden clean break, then a rotating cast of tryouts. It's almost as if the network's strategy manual is just a stack of old press releases with the names swapped out.
Whether she goes to FS1 or launches her own show on YouTube, I wish Molly Qerim nothing but the best. I don't want to see her fail, but at the same time, I don't see a path to success. It is hard to build an audience by yourself. It's hard to build and sustain an audience when it's just you.
Here's what makes Qerim's exit so much more than a personal dispute. It's the clearest sign yet that the ESPN family is a lot more stepmother than fairy godmother when it comes to the women holding their empire together. Burke Magnus, trying to keep things diplomatic, told The Athletic, "We tried to have her do other things and to redo that agreement. It honestly became less about that and more about, in my opinion, her wanting to do other and explore other things." If that sounds like a warm embrace, check the fine print. Every time a star host gets edged out, we hear the same tune. Versatility, expanded roles, other things. In reality, these other things are just smaller platforms, more invisible shifts, less influence. No one gets offered less money and less screen time as a reward for being indispensable. This isn't just business as usual, it's a slow fade from center stage, disguised as an invitation to try something new. And if you try to resist that fade, well, just ask Hill Champion, or now, Qerim, what that feels like. Men's decision to walk, especially after reportedly being offered a renewal that stripped her of the show she built, reads as more rebellion than resignation. She didn't wait around to be shuffled off to a side project or a desk somewhere out of camera range. She shut it down, hard and fast, without giving anyone at ESPN a chance to spin the story or stage a last hug on the studio floor. In doing so, she sent a message that echoed far beyond Bristol. Sometimes the only way to get respect in sports media is to stop asking for it. The result? The network got caught flat-footed, scrambling for a replacement, and now faces a fresh round of scrutiny about its track record with its most visible women. But let's dig deeper. There's a case to be made that Qerim's sudden resignation wasn't just a reaction, but a meticulously crafted move designed to flip the script on ESPN itself. For years, Qerim had played the ultimate moderator, smoothing over egos and keeping on-air feuds from spilling into disaster. When ESPN finally slid the demotion paperwork across the table, she didn't just sign and smile for the cameras. She detonated the narrative before they could even rehearse it. By quitting on her own terms before the contract had run its course, Qerim left ESPN flat-footed and unable to massage her departure into a tale of mutual respect or creative differences. In a company that excels at controlling the message, she snatched away the microphone and left them holding a press release with no headline.
When I heard that it was immediate, I was like, oh, she must already have a job lined up. Mm-hmm. And the job that she has lined up must be some sort of competitor to ESPN. And so that made me, is she going to Fox Sports?
There's real strategy in this kind of exit. By walking immediately after the demotion was formalized, rather than sticking around for the end-of-year slow fade, Qerim shifted all the attention onto the conditions she was leaving behind. Instead of letting the network stage manage her farewell with highlight reels and scripted testimonials, she left them scrambling for hosts, stammering through public statements and fielding tough questions about their treatment of top talent. This forced ESPN to show its hand in real time, exposing the reality behind those polished promises of opportunity. The network's awkward 30 to 45-day audition window wasn't just a logistical hiccup. It became a symbol of how unprepared they were for a woman who refused to bow out quietly. More than just a dramatic gesture, Qerim's exit landed like a chess move. She put the network in check, daring them to explain why a decade-long anchor would rather walk than accept a promotion that looked suspiciously like exile. This gambit didn't just burnish her reputation as a host unwilling to be sidelined. It also called out ESPN's double standards in real time, inviting audiences and industry watchers to scrutinize every decision the network made in the aftermath. Her abrupt departure was less retreat than a public challenge, demanding to know who exactly gets to write the endings for women in sports media, and who gets exposed when those endings don't go according to plan.
Last night, she abruptly resigned as the host of the show. And to say that I'm quite sad about it is an understatement.
As for Stephen A. Smith, the consequences of Qerim's exit cut deeper than his morning monologue let on. This is a man who has built a brand on certainty, volume, and having the last word. But as Qerim's chair sat empty, Smith suddenly looked out of place on his own turf. His tribute was respectful, sure, but only hours later, he was venting on SiriusXM about the details being none of y'all's business. When pressed, he slipped out of the hot seat with, "It's not as if I know all the details." For someone who usually claims omniscience on everything from the WNBA to global politics, this sudden ignorance rang hollow. Insiders say the real sting for Smith wasn't just losing a co-host, it was losing control. Qerim's move bypassed the network, the producers, and most importantly, him. There was no chance to pre-tape a highlight reel, no teary farewell, banter, no months of on-air nostalgia, just an empty seat, an Instagram post, and Smith left explaining himself to an audience that already smelled blood.
Well, let's remember, wasn't it just last week Stephen A. was on air bragging about the people he stood up for to get paid and how many, Cam, I did it for Shannon Sharp and I did it for this person and that person. And when I look at the abrupt, I'm not coming into work tomorrow.
Yeah.
That also is maybe there's pointing a finger at Stephen A. Smith.
Behind the scenes, sources at the network suggest that Smith was furious and caught off guard, not just by the speed of Qerim's exit, but by the optics. This was a direct hit to the heart of his influence. For a decade, Smith had been the gravitational center of First Take. But Qerim's departure exposed the reality. His brand might be massive, but it isn't invincible. When he pivoted on air to talking about humility and the need to know your place, the subtext was plain. Was he talking about Qerim, or was he talking about the rest of the ESPN roster, warning them not to get any ideas? That kind of speech isn't about closure, it's about reasserting the pecking order, drawing a line in the sand for anyone watching from the green room. Let's not gloss over what Qerim is rumored to be stepping into. Early word is that her new role at NBC Sports will give her a seat not just at the desk, but in the control room. Executive producer credits, cross-platform authority, a chance to shape coverage from the top down. After years spent in a glass ceiling masquerading as a debate stage, Qerim seems ready to build her own floor plan. For ESPN, it's an embarrassing loss. One that signals to every ambitious woman in the building that waiting your turn might just mean waiting for a demotion. For Smith, the message is even sharper. Power in the modern sports landscape is more fleeting than ever, and it only lasts as long as your supporting cast stays willing to stand behind you.
The other thing I thought, Steve, was when you pay Stephen A. Smith $20 million, that means, okay, well, whoever his co-host is, they're going to want an exorbitant amount of money. And so she may have been making $2.5–3 million as the host. Well, when Stephen A. is sitting there making 20, well, maybe now she wants to make 10.
The fallout for First Take itself is still unfolding. The network's trial period, 30 to 45 days of auditioning new hosts, shows just how little they planned for this storm. In the meantime, Smith's expanded NFL and NBA duties, courtesy of that $100 million contract, make it clear where the money and the future of the brand are going. But can First Take survive as the Stephen A. show, minus the one person who could keep him in check? Will the audience embrace a revolving door of new moderators? Or does Qerim's exit mark the start of a long, slow ratings slide? Already, insiders at competing networks are whispering that ESPN's grip on the morning sports debate crown might be more fragile than anyone realized. When you start losing the very people who made your product palatable, the entire playbook gets called into question. Here's the final, jaw-dropping twist. Qerim's next chapter is rumored to include full creative control and a salary leap. Meanwhile, ESPN doubled down on its investment in other rising stars, announcing new multi-year deals for Malika Andrews and others just hours after Qerim's exit hit the wire. Was this a clever move to shore up morale, or just an unintentional admission that when push comes to shove, some voices can be replaced and others can't? No matter how they spin it, the optics are undeniable. When a host walks away from the network's biggest show and lands an even bigger offer across town, it forces everyone to question just how much the ESPN badge is worth these days.
I believe this is something that we've seen from Stephen A. as of late, though. With the whole thing with LeBron, whenever LeBron went and got in his face, though, even your tone afterwards, whenever he's breaking down that situation, well, if he would have done something, we would have been fighting, right?
Oh gosh, yeah.
What are you talking about, man? What are you talking about? As a young person that looked up to Stephen A. Smith for so many years, man, it's
You said past tense. You said looked.
So we're left with the question no one at ESPN dares answer. If Stephen A. Smith truly valued Molly Qerim, why didn't he go to the mat to keep her? Why did the loudest voice in sports go suddenly silent when it mattered? Did he protect his empire or just reveal its limits? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Who do you think was really pulling the strings? And what secret power struggles are still hidden behind that bright studio desk? Smash subscribe, stay sharp, and remember, in the world of sports media, loyalty is just a handshake until the cameras turn off. Catch you next time, where the truth is always messier than the highlight reel.